Hey, guess what? We're back for more Nerdrevolt action. I swear to God, guys, I just got to tell you, every week, we're struggling to figure out like what's going on, and the fucking internet always delivers new shit for the Nerdrevolt. It's like a nonstop, uh, you know, cesspool of opinions and happenings and action. So we're so glad to bring it to you. So I'm your host, Brian Martinez, and I've brought a cornucopia of events and thoughts and suggestions and videos and all kinds of shit. But I also have my friends here with us, and I will quickly introduce them before we get into the show. So first we got Anna Cherry. Anna, thanks for coming.
Well, I do that for a living, so it's fine.
That's good. And we also have Hannah. I just wanted to say that after Anna, just to make some confusion.
Hello. We rhyme. No one can tell us apart.
That's
We're
right.
might be twins.
I thought so. From the side, you can't tell from the side. And we have Scott.
Badger Scott reported for details, sir.
And yes, Eddie's soldier, or I don't know, what's a fancy word I should say? No, I won't say it. Forget
Eddie's Badger.
I like it.
And last we have Max.
Private, you're so ugly you could be a modern art masterpiece. Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Excellent. Now, that everyone is here on this fine evening, I want to start by doing a mini rant-zerker of a new video. So I'm going to share screens. Give me a second here. We're looking at a college humor vid. Let me see if I can get this to work the way that Karen used to do it. She's more awesome at this than me. What? Let me see. Sharing screens. My fucking shit's slow. There we go. All right. So, can you guys see that okay? Oh, I also have to make sure I'm sharing with everyone, just to make sure this is like optimum. Present to everyone. Okay. So this is the series Adam Ruins Everything, and he did a bit on video games called Why People Think Video Games Are Just for Boys. So even before this video has started to play, it's wrong. so all right, let's start playing the video. I have to stop it every 20 seconds for DMCA purposes. If you guys are seeing it, I want to make sure the chat can see it. Can you guys in the chat see the video? Yes. Okay. So we are good.
I mean, I'm sure there's some like 80-year-old people who think video games are just for boys.
There are probably some World War II veterans that think this, yes. But I don't think that's what Adam is talking about when he's talking in this video.
Adam, don't let me down. Adam, don't let me down.
What he has to say. Well, prepare your anus, because here comes Adam and his like amazing haircut. It's my favorite thing about him.
That haircut aside, he's been downright awesome in most of the videos I've watched from Adam Ruins Everything, and I'm glad he was ruining shit for people, especially things like diamonds and other things that neatly tie into the gynocentric culture that totally favors women over men and puts unnecessary expectations on men. So I was really excited about a lot of his videos.
Well, here we go.
Okay.
Early video games like Pong were totally unisex.
Am I a boy dot or a girl dot?
You're just a dot.
Ow, 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 ow.
In fact, the game was marketed to the entire family.
What about Pac-Man? He was a boy.
True, but the game was so popular with women that when it came time for a sequel, the developers gave it a female main character. Ms. Pac-Man.
Hold on. We got to stop for DMCA purposes. So all of this is pretty much accurate. The Pac-Man game was the character was a boy, I guess, because his name was Man. The game was really popular with women players, so when they made a sequel, they decided to call it Miss Pac-Man. But doesn't that already kind of tell you that a game doesn't need a female protagonist to be popular with women?
Question is, was Miss Pac-Man more popular than the original Pac-Man?
The Miss Pac-Man arcade was more popular than the original Pac-Man because it made a lot of improvements on the original Pac-Man, though. It wasn't
So
just
point is,
because
it
the
could be a
character.
woman or man, and it doesn't matter if it's a good game. People will like it, both men and
Yes.
women.
Yeah, pretty much. And a lot of guys played Miss Pac-Man, and they didn't say, "Man, this sucks, phooey. I wanted to be a boy."
Gamer Pac, go home.
You know
Anna,
what?
your logic is kind of offending me right now. I got to be real honest.
I'm sorry, I
I
forgot.
don't know if there's a place for that in gaming yet. I mean, come on.
Should
Let's
have
be
left
real.
my logic and gone back to the kitchen. I'm sorry.
It is 2015. Okay, need I remind you? Okay.
Oh, nice. I was waiting for my.
Beat to the punch.
That's right. Okay.
You heard it here first. MRAs are violent. Brian just got punched. On the radio.
That's animal abuse, I'll have you know.
Oh, no.
And they were misogynist to me in my logic just 5 seconds ago. So, wow.
Go to
wow.
All of the hate.
patreon.com/Anna Cherry.
Yes, please, if you want to join my website and look at my porn. Yes, do that. But anyway.
Because she's been harassed.
Before we go on, can I just point out one thing that I just noticed right now? Don't you think it's kind of patriarchal and shitlordery, the fact that they named the second version of Pac-Man Ms. Pac-Man? I mean, why is she still being referred to as a man? Like,
Anita Sarkeesian was right.
Well, let's not go around.
Well, that's the first example of a man with boobs. I mean, all they did is just put a bow and some makeup. It's just essentially Pac-Man in drag, and they're trying to pass it off as a woman. That's offensive.
Unless, of course, he chose to be in drag and wanted to be called Ms. Pac-Man. We shouldn't go around gendering Pac people.
Oh,
yeah, right. But no, then Pac-Man is appropriating transsexual culture.
Or he just is a transsexual, you shitlord. Respect his identity.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry.
How deep does this go? My God.
We have to go deeper.
We have deconstructed Pac-Man. So basically, Miss Pac-Man is the way in which Pac-Man evolved and came out in his transgender personality. It's so brave.
Stunning and brave. All right, let's keep going. We've literally not even gotten to the argument yet.
She's a strong, independent woman.
I just love that they gave these strong, independent Ms. in that, and then still gave her Pac-Man as the name.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Miss Pac-Man is trans. Tell Woo.
I'm gonna go back a little bit and continue to play the video.
Man.
Oh yeah, I'm spooky.
Not Mrs. Ms. She was a modern 80s career woman.
Now, I'm sure that was supposed to be a joke, but
Eating balls for a living? That's not really...
Well, that was kind of modern 80s career women. Just to be honest.
I saw a movie about that once.
Don't tell feminists that.
Movie, but...
Showgirls? Like, what?
Yeah.
girls.
Oh,
All
Jesse
right.
Spano.
Well, that's their internalized misogyny that is clearly preventing them from making rational decisions as the empowered women that we say all women are. But those women are not, because they're just like totally giving it up to the patriarchy because they're engaged in sex work. Yeah.
My male gaze. All right, let's keep going.
I have an MBA in eating ghosts.
Waka 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 waka.
Ah! She's so confident.
And not only was much of the audience female, many of the developers were too. Among the stars of early game design were Atari's Carol Shaw, Centipede creator Donna Bailey, and Roberta Williams, an adventure game pioneer and company co-founder, whose King's Quest series was a massive hit among gamers of all stripes.
Can you pause it right there?
Everything's great.
Yeah.
So Roberta, to me, sounds this. Too bad Allison's not here, but tell me Cameron was not based on Roberta. So the early female pioneer that created adventure games and was a co-owner of a company named Roberta. Come on. Come on.
No, absolutely. That's definitely a
Pat myself on the back there.
reference. Allison, you missed it. You missed an opportunity to jump on there with your obsession. But yes.
There's something else about this. Here we have 3 female developers, something that, anti-Gamergate says never happened.
Not this early, for sure.
They didn't just focus on creating female characters. They just made good games.
And genres. I mean, Roberta, she pioneered a genre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this wasn't like, well, you have to employ women in the industry so women will be represented in the games and blah, blah, blah. No, they made what they wanted to make. They didn't get locked into, limited to some sort of social justice ideology narrative that they had to promote. You know, it's kind of sick that they're trying to force that on developers of both sexes now.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. So you can see what happens next.
Stripes.
Cool. Seems like everything's great. Can I play my game now?
Nope.
So the kid says everything's great. Can I play my game now? And here's where Adam drops his truth bomb, supposedly.
Because all of it changed thanks to the video game crash of 1983. Greedy publishers started flooding the market with shoddy games like I Want My Mommy, Lost Luggage, and E.T. for the Atari 2600, which has been called one of the worst games of all time.
Yuck. I'll play anything, and even I know that's a turd.
Most adults stopped playing games entirely, and the video game market cratered.
Fully believable.
So when it came time to market the original Nintendo...
Well,
Yeah.
that's
Fully on board with that.
Hold on.
no.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
Okay, the video game crash obviously also had nothing to do, and he's not mentioning the fact that Atari was creating millions of carts when they didn't have an install base that met for the things that they were making. And he's totally glossing over all that, because that had a huge part. Because when you have 300,000 install base and you're creating 1.5 million carts, where the fuck did they think this stuff is going to go?
Mm-hmm.
When you've only got 300,000 consoles or something like, I'm pulling the numbers out, but it's some crazy disparity like that. So, okay, this is already wrong in that regard, just alone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong because it still talks about the crash that had to do with just, in general, unsustainability. I mean, obviously, it's skipping a lot. But
Yeah,
I'm
he's
not
also
sure what's
claiming,
wrong
though,
with
he's claiming that adults stopped playing games and that was part of the reason. When you flood your market, it isn't because people stop using your product that you have, that you have financial issues. It's because you've created more than you can sell, even with your.
So you think there's only so many games they could buy, and they're just
right.
so
Well,
saturated.
What I was saying was
demand did
basically
not meet the supply.
right. Basically, what happened was the Atari was creating so many carts, and they literally didn't have enough consoles
what's a cart?
for all those carts.
Cartridges.
The cartridges. Sorry,
Oh.
the cartridges. And what happens is when the retailers see this stuff sitting on the shelves, that destroys their confidence in restocking new items, and so that makes them not want to refresh, like say a product line or whatever it is, and that is probably more likely to the point what caused the crash is because Atari was creating millions of carts when their install base was, say, like again, I can't remember the exact number, but say we're talking about 1.5 million game cartridges and 300,000 consoles. That just, the math is real fucked up there.
So they assume people would just buy lots of games and play all of
Who
them.
knows?
Skipping?
It's fucking weird. Yeah.
Basically, because they overproduced, they could sell the same number of games the next year as they did the previous year and feel like they did worse because and this is something else in marketing, and they want to experience a certain amount of growth every year, and they'll have goals. You have to.
It's a bottom line of capitalism. You have to increase your production every year.
Not your production, your sales.
That's what I meant, like your money, return on investment, your ROI.
Right. So if their sales didn't go up as much as they had projected and as much as they were depending on because of the amount that they had produced, they would consider themselves to have done worse. And that would be considered a crash too. And just not the same way as if they lost all of their sales.
So they did a bunch of dumb stuff and a crash happened. Cool.
No, it's the same kind of stupidity that Wizards of the Coast got into with Magic the Gathering back in the 90s, where they got to the point where you couldn't even get started buying an edition before the next one was out, and they were sort of encouraging the different tournaments to ban certain cards in the game and then coming out with cards that were exactly like those cards but later editions that you could use. So your good cards would get banned, and then in order to keep up you had to just keep buying edition after edition, and like a huge number of people that I knew that played just quit playing because
lots of people I knew quit, and that's why I didn't play, because it wasn't about the skill you had but about the amount of money you had to buy the right cards that were still not banned but the most powerful.
And it's you saw sort of the same thing going on with all these crap games coming out that nobody really wants to play I Want My Mommy or E.T. I will admit that my family bought that game.
I had it too. I had it too, Hannah. I had 18.
I still feel ripped off.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, cartridges were so cheap back then too. There was like new ones coming out every week, and yes, they flooded the market with a large number that people. There was just not enough people buying to keep up, and I think part of the reason why it was like a really dumb move was also because it was such a new industry, and they probably didn't, they were just sort of like throwing all of their chips into one basket, as it were, without knowing what the consequences were because this was so new.
But I mean, I would also like to look at the culture surrounding I guess we're talking about early to mid 80s here, because there was very much the whole like champagne, the champagne of drugs, the cocaine, padded suit, business, Wall Street culture that very much kind of had this anti-D&D, like they were demon worshippers, or an anti-gamer, like they're just idiot slackers. So there was an anti-gamer sentiment that we've had to overcome as nerds. For a while now, and so I wonder if there was, because I mean I've seen this video before, but I wonder if there was a relation between what happens after this, where they have to market to children, that actually there was some sort of cause that resulted in adults not playing games, and that they had to kind of refracture the system. But anyway, let's
keep going.
New entertainment system, Nintendo devised a plan. Instead of selling it in the electronics section, they sold it in the toy aisle. But by then, the toy aisle was completely separated into pink and blue, boy and girl. Nintendo had to choose a side. They went with boy.
Okay, so the presumption is that that because the toy section was divided into boys and girls, Nintendo had to choose a side. But
advertising is responsible for that.
That's not really true either, though.
But that's not really true. There were There was a section I used to work in a toy store, and in toy stores there was a boys section and a girls section, but there was also a section that was not devoted to either.
And who the fuck ever shops at that section other than weirdos? They wanted to market to normies, okay?
Here's another thing too, though. If you're looking at his statements right now, he's looking at things through the lens of today. Mm-hmm. I wonder if he could verify this, because I don't know. Something just doesn't seem. It's not adding up for me.
Yeah, this is kind of weird for me too, because I remember there being an aisle that was just for girls. That was the aisle that had the Barbies and stuff in it, but I don't remember anything being labeled just for boys.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, everything was like.
Well, that was the superhero area. It was
just for boys.
No, I don't. The action figure stuff was not
like rocks, and
it wasn't made for boys, but like in the same way that the Barbie section I think was targeting girls. I think the stuff that were traditionally stuff that boys were interested in. It's not like it said boys. It just had toys, and then there was a section that was specifically labeled girls. But then there was the stuff that was like board games and like jigsaw puzzles and like the science like the what do they call the kind of like the sciencey stuff, like the Legos.
The girls section was kind of territorially marked. The girls section was kind of territorially marked because it was full of pink stuff. It was like you walked in there and you walked into that aisle, you felt like a bubblegum factory had exploded all over that section of the toy store. You didn't see that necessarily. That like everything in the boys section was not blue.
No,
it was just stuff. And if it was just for boys, it wasn't really communicated that way in any fashion by the decor or the way it was laid out or even the way it was promoted in the store. It wasn't, the girl stuff, there were ads up with happy girls playing with Barbie dolls and stuff like that. The action figure area had both sexes in pictures.
Like
I really don't think guys were catered to that way.
Well, yeah, I mean that's
not when I was a kid.
I don't think they were specifically. And again, the creative stuff and the board games and stuff was not in either section. So a Nintendo console could easily have sat in a section where, like board games and other kinds of gaming things, or even sort of like play stuff, like where the bicycles and skateboards and stuff like that. It could even sit there, and that would not necessarily be targeting a specific demographic. But
yeah, to my memory, Nintendo wasn't targeting specific demographics either, and honestly, both sexes of kids played the games. You know?
Oh, for sure.
Agreed.
But let's keep going, and let's
Yes.
see what else Adam has to say.
And then they marketed to those boys relentlessly.
What's it like to play the Nintendo Entertainment System? Now, play with power.
Now, wait a minute. Could a girl not find that attractive?
I was about to say, yes, they are
Yeah.
marketing to boys like fuck, but I want to be with those boys.
Yeah, I mean, don't you want to play with power?
I mean, no, I totally just saw it in the new light because I was like, yeah, fuck the advertising industry because I have the biggest issues with the advertising industry as a psychologist, especially.
Sure.
I won't get on my soapbox right now. I think that's one of the ill effects of capitalism, or at least laissez-faire capitalism anyway. Yes, they're right. There was stupid, retarded, manufactured bullshit thrown at boys as a result of the advertising industry. But I just saw it in a new light to the point of like, wait a minute, as a girl watching that, like, I don't mind rock music. I'm one of those girls. Like, I like it. And so I'd like totally want to hang out with those boys, and I think they're hella cute. So I see it's marketed to both genders, to be honest.
Yeah, I could see that. I would also add that it's important to point out that these commercials are the ones that were made in the United States. Nintendo was a Japanese console. I wonder if Adam's going to show what the ads in Japan were, because that would actually tell you what Nintendo was made for, wouldn't it?
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. That's like whenever you're watching anime and they have like this gigantic blonde-haired person, you're like, that's an American, isn't it? And then they're like really rude and like loud, and you're like, oh, it's an American. Okay. So based on that, I wonder if Japanese have had, or at least the marketers in that sense, have had an interesting view of Americans, which in their country, because they're also small and like gentle people compared to more raucous, Germanic types, they definitely would see, these tall white men as like loud, strange, masculine things. We've seen a lot of like characters like that, like Armstrong and a variety of others. So I wonder if this was actually made by Japanese people to market to Americans.
Maybe, but I don't know. That rock music, though.
That was some good music. I enjoyed
that rock music, though. I don't know. Let's
I
keep
am
going.
not blonde. I just want to make that perfectly clear.
Okay, let's keep going.
Other brands soon followed suit.
From the boys.
And kept marketing to them as they grew up.
It's not the size of your howitzer, it's what you do with it.
I got this Polar 360 stale fish.
Okay, this might be a bit of cherry picking because there's way more commercials than this guy's showing, but it seems like he's picking the ones that are specifically masculine in nature. That's just me. Like some of these I don't even really remember. But what?
Confirmation bias, Brian? How? I don't know. What do you think? Really?
It's sort of
Hey,
like, though,
come on. Let me introduce you to this concept that they call suspension of disbelief.
Hey, bastard, that's mine.
That's right. Anna?
Yeah, it's like moving to whenever moving to the States, like I was exposed to which was in 2001, and we just got like Nickelodeon and MTV type of channels in the former USSR where I lived right before moving and was born and lived. And whenever I got here, there was like we had some of that Nick and MTV, but not the American commercials because you couldn't buy these products here. But moving to America, there was suddenly a floodgates of commercials opened, and it was really interesting to watch just how many they're targeted against girls in the exact same way they're against guys. Like I get his point, but that's like I don't know if there's an equivalent of it, but it's like taking action figures or statuettes, like okay, the little Funko Pops or whatever that all the like nerdy boys have all these like I guess we have D&D minis as nerds. So there's D&D minis, then there's like all sorts of video game character statues that I see on Instagram. Like a lot of my followers are predominantly guys that have these. So then you can look at these commercials from the same era that have all these pony figurines and little like dolls that are exclusively marketed to girls with lots of pinks and ribbons and bows. And you're like, oh my God, all these action figures and figurines are only meant for girls. Like it's very selective, obviously, and it gives an unfair demonstration if he's not including also video games that were targeted towards girls, but maybe there weren't. who the fuck knows? I, for instance, grew up in a more traditional sense, not for gender roles, well, that too, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I also grew up with a traditional, like, societal role, I guess, or whatever, that was expected of girls. Like, I was always like the weird tomboy, non-girl person, because there's like, girls are not supposed to do all these things that you do. So in that sense, like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that was targeted towards girls specifically too, and if he brought that up, that would be a lot more fair. But I can also see that people legitimately didn't think that girls would play with games because they're like, girls like pink things, and they would never, sit in front of the console. And it's like, more girls do play games now, but whenever you look at those statistics, it's usually mobile games. And when it comes to like handheld console or especially the PC gaming, there's so few girls in that world because there are just some natural predilections that work better with male brains versus female brains. So like, I don't know, were there commercials that targeted girls that were for video games? Maybe, maybe not. He didn't give me a sample that was representative in any way. But there's also so much girl-targeted stuff too, and it's disingenuous to ignore that in light of like other things. Yeah.
There actually were, but I cannot, for the life of me, remember whether they were Atari games or Nintendo games. And it just sort of all blends because that's quite a long time ago. And to be honest, what was marketed really didn't determine what the kids in my neighborhood bought. I mean, we got started playing Dungeons and Dragons without a single ad or anything marketing it to us. It was just something that we found in the hobby store and started. It wasn't even in a toy section. It was, it was in the hobby store. It wasn't in a regular store. And most of what that store was things like model trains and model helicopters and model cars. And I
remember the model cars. You get like a bazillion tiny little pieces,
and then you try to put
special glue and the testers paints and shit.
Yeah,
they still have those. I don't know.
Yeah, oh yeah, they still have those, and you have to have the room properly ventilated, or you lose brain cells. And yeah. But yeah, that was the place that had the penny candy and the, and there were these books, and they looked interesting. Like my brother, who really wasn't into books much, looked at these and he was like, "Wow, this is really cool." We were looking at the artwork. We're like, "Hey, we want to do this." Didn't have any marketing at all involved. It was just stuff that we picked up, and one of our buddies really got us started in it. Didn't have anything coming at us from the television, didn't have anything coming at us from radio, didn't have, a bunch of kids at school talking about it. In fact, you didn't really talk about that at school if you didn't want to get beat up. So, this idea that girls might choose not to play video games because of what commercials on television said they should play. I got inundated with commercials for strawberry shortcake. Commercials for My Little Pony, commercials for Barbie dolls and Glamour Gals and
Rainbow Bright.
Yeah, Rainbow Bright, and I'm trying to think what else there was. There's all kinds of stuff
all kinds of stuff.
Jam and the holograms.
Yeah, and I had Barbies, but I didn't really have a lot of. I didn't have a lot of that other stuff. I had the different incarnations of Princess Leia, and she really wasn't necessarily marketed based on gender. There were commercials showing boys playing with her, and there were commercials showing girls playing with her, and the other action figures from Star Wars as well. Yeah. My brother had most of the Star Wars figures because it's what my parents got him more Star Wars figures because I usually asked for books and stuff. But to be honest, a lot of this idea that marketing determines what kids are going to want is bullshit. Like, it tells them what's out there, and it might give them a bit of an idea. But once you get past a certain age, you start to figure out what you want based on what you like about the product or what you dislike about the product, not based on what the advertiser says is really cool.
Well, that's the big problem with that. Yeah, if you can't decide for yourself and you're an impressionable kid that's going to go to your parents, "I want this," you're going to want whatever's on TV frequently, and he's like your favorite dumb cartoon character. Or unless you're in the more popular cliques where having a certain toy means you are successful, and a popular kid. That's a big There were commercials for just real quick. There were commercials for Disney. This is just sick. They had commercials for Disney that had the kid like open up this envelope in the class, and all this like Disney fireworks come out, and everyone looks at him. And it was like, "Oh, the most popular kid in class, and everyone will love you." They're like almost literally say that. Or when they have the Super Soaker commercial, where the kid in the center has like one of those dingy like old school soakers, and everyone around him has a Super Soaker, totally hosing him down because he's not one of the cool kids who doesn't have a Super Soaker. So it's like, oh, are you freaking kidding me with this stuff? And a lot of kids do buy into that.
Existed, but they didn't necessarily decide what the kids would have. Kids didn't buy the Super Soaker because the commercials were great. Kids bought the Super Soaker because it shot a shitload of water. And the commercials communicated that, but they didn't make the Super Soaker cool. It was cool because it was a cool toy. And if it had had the same marketing, but it had been a shit toy, a few kids would have bought it, but most of them wouldn't. But to answer Evildoer's question, no, I did not collect smelly stickers or any other stickers for that matter, but I had Garbage Pail Kids cards.
I collected smelly stickers.
We gotta keep going, but let's see the other fantastic marketing that Nintendo of America had going on.
I know you like that. I know you love that. It's all about the control.
You are so totally whipped.
Come and play with me. And after decades of this kind of advertising, what's up, bitch? We now think of video games as being the exclusive domain of the male sex.
All right. So where does this come from? So it's basically what Hannah was saying. The idea that just because a bunch of guys on the marketing teams think that they're marketing to a specific demographic, then they are actually creating the idea that it is limited to that demographic, which is really stupid. Not only as a person just looking on that knows that, you know, games are cool because they're cool, not because they're for boys, but also the marketers themselves, it's really stupid for them to market only for boys because they're missing out on an entire other market that they're not tapping into. But I know that that's not true because, you know, growing up, I owned all the Nintendo consoles, and I had like the Atari 2600. My mom played that more than I did. And when I got a Nintendo, like my sister was totally into Mario. So I don't know. I think that what Adam's trying to say is that somehow the marketing of something determines the actual customer base of something.
Well, what he's basically saying is that girls are stupid and will only buy the things that television tells them to.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know. That's
exactly.
Boys are stupid, and if some television tells them something's cool, they'll like it whether it is or not, right? You know, that blows my mind. But then again, I might have been a weird kid. The story about the behind the Garbage Pail Kids cards is I had a bunch of classmates that wanted Cabbage Patch dolls. Now, they didn't want them necessarily because of advertising. I remember Cabbage Patch dolls starting out as a thing old ladies made out of discarded pantyhose. That there was a pattern, and you could make the Cabbage Patch, and you stuffed it with cotton, made the Cabbage Patch doll by the way you sewed the pantyhose. And I never made them. My grandmother never made them, but I used to see them at like crafter shows all the time. And eventually, I can't remember which toy company, it was probably Mattel because they make like everything, began marketing plastic-faced Cabbage Patch dolls. And they are the creepiest ass looking doll since the porcelain doll, and I didn't want one because they looked wrong. And if they were not intended to look wrong. If they look wrong and they're intended to look wrong, they're pretty cool. If they look wrong and they're intended to look cute and cuddly and you know, something that you want to take home with you, then I don't want one.
Stuff of nightmares.
Yes. And so the year that they were really popular, they were so like a viral toy. They were so popular that it was to the point where you couldn't just go into the store and buy one. You had to stand in line and wait. And then you got called back to a little room where they would tell you which one you could have. And
it was
like
starting because of this stuff.
Yes.
Like, riots.
There were people like, well, and the same thing happened with Tickle Me Elmo years later. There was a stabbing in Ohio over not the last Tickle Me Elmo in the store, just the last one on the shelf at the moment, where Stockboy had told the two women that he was going to go get more, and one of them stabbed the other one to get the one that was on the shelf. And of course, neither one of them got their Tickle Me Elmo doll. One of them went to the hospital, and the other one got arrested. But and this is how people are over toys. But it wasn't advertising. It was this was something that grew out of, like, the Cabbage Patch thing grew out of a hobby. And the Elmo doll grew out of the popularity of Sesame Street. It wasn't so much promotion as it was that particular character was just very, very loved. And it was adorable listening to it, giggle. And it would, like, the doll kind of vibrated and shit when it was giggling or whatever. But it was funny. So everybody liked the doll. But, yeah. That this kind of thing, the idea that it's advertising that directs what people want, it's foolish to say that it keeps a generation of girls out of video games.
I honestly think like a large portion of the effort that a lot of advertisers go to reach children, especially, most of it, I think it pretty much falls flat in terms of targeting a specific demographic. Yeah. I think that, like, when I watch, for example, if I watch a commercial when I was a little kid with action figures, I was too busy looking at what the figures' features were in the commercial rather than what kind of music was playing or whether the kids that were playing them looked, were like white kids or black kids or whatever. I didn't care about any of those things. I was just like, what does it do? And do I want that? And that was basically the way. And I don't think I'm special in that way. I think that it's sort of like I'm reminded when I see these, especially these 80s commercials. I'm reminded of Steve Buscemi dressed up like a high school kid, and he's like, "Hello, fellow students." That's kind of like how I see it.
I think we're all a bit weird. Yeah, no, I think we're all a bit weird here, though. Granted, most people that are out there in the world don't necessarily have the same analytical approach towards, like, their life or what they want to do. They don't have the same, like, hey, what does this do and how does this make me happy? There is a herd mentality. I mean, like, we see people buying ridiculous things because they're trends, and, like, all those spoiled teenagers like bitching about whatever latest trend, like the Air Jordans or Beats or whatever the overpriced ridiculous thing is. There are certain ways in which psychological advertising works on us to just not to influence 100%. We're not talking about brainwashing here, but it does elevate the status of a thing, and a lot of people care about status. And so those people, not us, we are different in that regard. But those other people will go after whatever is the status thing.
It's funny you should mention that because the thing my sort of like main topic thing is a little bit involved with that. But Scott, did you want to say something?
Oh, this is like ages ago, but it's somewhat pertinent. But if you really want to look at it, like as far as like the advertising goes, back in the early '80s, government regulations changed, and it was largely because of companies like Kenner and Mattel and Hasbro who were actually lobbying the government to be able to create television shows that were based off of toy lines, because before then you couldn't do that. And that's when you saw, like, so what Max is saying is a bit disingenuous and it's a bit selective, because when that happened back in the early 80s, I want to say it was around like 82 or 83 when that finally actually broke and they could actually do that. You saw a flood of television shows to push toys for both boys and girls. I mean, it was just it was Gem and the Holograms, it was Rainbow Bright, it was the Care Bears, it was G.I. Joe, emails, it was just all these things. So there wasn't really this, oh, it was just for boys. That's a bunch of fucking nonsense. It's verifiably wrong, because it was a push by these companies that saw an avenue to create revenue. And they were doing it for everybody. It wasn't selective, not in the slightest.
And it's Adam, not Max. Max is on our side.
Yeah, I want to point something out about the status thing too. And it might be that my experience regarding status is very different, because the neighborhood I grew up in, my family was fairly well middle class, mostly because my father had 4 jobs. But my family was middle class. But the neighborhood we lived in was mostly less than middle class. We didn't have the kind of poverty in the small community I grew up in that you hear about in, inner city neighborhoods where kids were going without meals and stuff. But it was enough that people didn't have extra money for things. And a lot of the kids in my neighborhood that had stuff like video game consoles and the games to go with them, the boys had mowed lawns all summer to get those. If they didn't get it for Christmas, or if they didn't get it for their birthday, it wasn't just something that their parents were going to buy them, and they would have to really work hard and save up to get that stuff. And the same thing, if any toy that big that girls were going to get, you'd see more. It was more older girls because younger girls really didn't have much in the way of jobs, whereas boys might get paper routes and mow lawns and stuff as young as 10 years old. But high school girls would save up their babysitting money, and or junior high school girls would save up their babysitting money back when you could have a 14-year-old babysit your kids, and and buy those things for themselves. And they didn't necessarily ask their parents for money for it because their parents didn't have money for it. So the idea of something creating status didn't necessarily market to that group of kids because they kind of had an understanding of the value of their money. And they understood that if they bought a trinket that turned out to be worthless because somebody on television said it was cool, and they might not necessarily be able to get their money back because they were a kid, that was basically a waste of an entire summer. So it wasn't as normal in my neighborhood to buy shoes that people were shooting each other for in New York and show off to everybody, look, I have this brand of shoes. People would be like, yeah, so I have 4 pairs of shoes for what you spent, you dumbass, and that was kind of the way it was. Now, I guess on the other side of town there might have been some kids that were like that, but it was more with clothing than with toys. And it was, if you didn't wear the right thing, you didn't fit into their cliques necessarily. But even then, it wasn't necessarily brand names as much as it was style. There were brand names that were more important than others, but like if you didn't wear the right brand name of jeans, nobody cared. They cared more whether or not your jeans were acid washed, and it was totally different than I'm hearing described. With regard to status and toys, I'd never really thought of it that way until maybe adulthood, where some people's toys in adulthood give them status, like the more expensive toys, like having a car that you get just because it drives fast or just because it's a certain type of car, things like that.
I do think that your view on that does change depending on whether or not, first off, what you had before you got it, and also whether or not you earned it. Like in my own house, like in my house growing up, I'm the oldest of 3, and when I was like the only child at first, because I was the first one, I had to work really hard to earn an allowance that I had to save up in order to get something. And part of the reason why was because my parents didn't have much either, so they wanted to sort of work from a, if you earn it, I'll give you some money kind of a model. But when my mother got her degree and she was able to become a part of the workforce with my father, this was after my second brother, my brother was born, the first one, then they had more money. So when my brother got to my age, when I was like working, doing chores and stuff to earn money, he wasn't doing it because they had more money, like more disposable income. So he became a lot more spoiled and a lot more interested in name brands and like nice clothes and like image and status. Whereas I knew what it meant to earn those things, and I valued them a great deal, So if I got like a little toy, I was really happy with it because I bought it with my own money. For him, these things were just more disposable because he didn't actually earn it, because it was something that he was able to get because my parents had the capacity to just give it to him, because they had more money at the time. And when we would go clothing shopping or clothes shopping, for example, for school, they would ask me what I wanted, and I would say, well, look, I just want it to be something cheap. Like, I'm not interested in, how much you spend. Like, for shoes, we can go to Payless and just get, like, something that's going to fit. I'm not, like, overly concerned. My brother, though, he wanted the new Nikes. He wanted to, like, get, he wanted something that had, like, a name brand on it. He was very concerned with that because for him it was like not only was it a bigger deal for whatever reason, but also because he never had to really earn it or work for it. He didn't value it as much, so he was more like, I just want the name brand. It was I don't know, it was just a different attitude.
So that does make a big difference in what people decide to buy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we got to keep going. Max, I know you haven't spoken much. I'm not looking at the chat, so if you're typing your name, I can't see it because I'm playing the video on full screen.
No, I'm not typing my name. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. So if you want to just chime in, okay. All right, let's keep going.
Okay, those ads are weird, but boys just like video games more than girls do.
Sorry, Jake. That's a straight-up myth.
Okay, now whoever in the history of ever made that assumption? That boys just like video games and girls don't.
Not it.
That's just that's just not a thing that anyone's ever said, Adam. What myth are you disproving? Like, seriously?
Yeah, citation needed. Please.
Wait, you got to say it like this. Citation needed.
Or how about this? Citation needed. I kind of go aggressive because male toxicity and all that. So.
I was just doing the Double Deer thing.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't.
Citation. All right.
Right.
Let's keep going.
More adult women play video games than teenage boys do.
Sweet.
That's just counting stupid phone games.
So games are games, Jake. All that means is that mainstream
Stop.
consoles
Stop.
like
Stop.
Okay,
Stop.
no.
Hold on. Pause.
Bullshit. Okay,
Yeah,
first thing,
no.
all right?
Wait, let Max talk because he hasn't spoken in a while.
Okay, what game genres are the most lucrative? What types of players are the ones that are generating the most sales for games? And what genre of games are providing the most innovation within the gaming industry? It's predominantly...
fucking WoW, mainly.
Yeah. Well, no, the thing is, it's just like he's trying to say, well, yeah, games are all just games, but...
They are not.
Which
I have
demographic...
a example of this. What they're doing is they're just wordplay. It's semantics. There was a woman recently. I saw I think maybe Patricia Hernandez, maybe not one of those people.
Probably.
And she said that like Fallout 4, I think it was, or some game like that. Or no, BioShock Infinite, that's what it was. The one where 3 women get to kill their father in the end. Yeah, that game. So the great game, I was so pissed there was no multiplayer because BioShock 2 multiplayer was like my favorite fucking thing ever. And I was really disappointed that Infinite didn't have that, even though it is an infinite gameplay. Once you end the game, you can start it over again, and it's like a loop. It's great. Anyway, she was like, hey, it's a great multiplayer game. Well, I mean, a multiplayer game is just a game that you play with multiple people, right? Yes, but no. So there's a difference between game categories and words that mean things. So
Wait,
you can't do that.
Are you saying that feminists have this thing where they like to redefine language and they like to play with words? Is that a thing? I didn't know. That sounds crazy to me.
Must be something I'm raised and just men do. Men are good at that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Max, I'm sorry. You can go ahead and finish your point.
No, it's just you got to realize that when it comes to the sphere of video games, yes, all games are there's phone games are just as much games as the games that you play on consoles. But what genre of games and what demographic of gamers are the ones that are generating the most sales for the video games industry? It's if I just bring up on Wikipedia right now, I just did before I did this, what are the most successful game franchises of all time? You got Mario, you got Grand Theft Auto, you got Call of Duty. These strategy, these violent, these action, these fast-paced games, these shooters that predominantly feature the male demographic. Now, granted, there are certain games that you can have, like The Sims or like Candy Crush, that are predominantly female, and you cater to those particular demographics. But the fact that the violent video games aren't catering to women, that's just a problem because reasons.
Yeah. Those games are not necessarily not being targeted towards women. They're just Adam is doing a thing where he is trying to say that just because a game is something that is more popular with boys, it is made for boys. But like, if you were going to market, like, in order for you to presume that a game needs to be marketed towards women, you would actually have to adapt a sexist attitude where you think games need to be made with women in mind. But if gender is a social construct, which people would, try to make the argument for, then it shouldn't matter whether or not a woman wants to play Call of Duty or if they want to play Tetris, right?
Exactly.
But it shouldn't matter.
Am I the only one hearing Brian being taken over by a Cyberman?
Yeah,
she's
going
my
robot
robot.
again.
Yeah, see, Brian, the thing is, he's making too much sense, and the patriarch.
They're zapping his
They're trying to
brain.
shut him
Make
down.
sure he's after you.
Yeah.
They're trying to shut down the signal.
I'm going to keep playing
can't
the
stop the
video.
signal.
But that claim is more of that same, if it's not all about women, then women are excluded. That's that same attitude that permeates all of feminism, that solipsistic me, all me, only me, or I'm excluded attitude.
Well, and what's funny about it too is that people they don't seem to ever take into account the fact that if you make something, maybe you have something in mind for it, but you're going to find your audience through this thing being exposed and being out in the world and people finding it and saying, this is something that I enjoy, and it doesn't matter if you're a fucking guy or a girl. You will find your audience, and maybe people are going to be predisposed to it, but it's not because I firmly believe it's not because you're a male or female, because I've been a hardcore gamer, for lack of a better way of putting it, for a long time, and I've always had female players on our clans, and in first-person shooter games and stuff like that, which are, they're male games. It's just like, but they're not male games. I have plenty of fucking friends that are female that play these first-person shooters and are really good at them. So it just blows that whole fucking argument out of the water. It's just not true. It's
And even at the beginning, when he was saying that games were gender neutral, where he's referring to these action games as male targeted. Before Nintendo, Atari and other systems had games like, there was one called Combat that my brother and I used to play all the time. You drove around in tanks and shot at each other, and in helicopters and shot. And there was one called Commando we used to play all the time. The Konami code worked on it. And of course then you went into, it would put you in God mode and you could get shot at but you couldn't die. There were all kinds of games like.
Do we lose Hannah?
Hannah? Am I still robotic?
You are robotic, and Hannah has disappeared. Oh my.
Oh, fuck.
The
Hey,
patriarchy
Brian,
is really unhappy
it might
with
clear
this.
it up.
What should I do?
Maybe kill the Doge, it might clear it up.
Kill the Doge.
Yeah.
Hannah is back.
Oh, Hannah's back.
Okay. Hannah, we lost you for a second.
Oh.
You were talking about Commando. Am I still robotic?
Yeah, unfortunately.
All right.
It says my connection is experiencing difficulties, so apparently I'm the next one under the matriarchy attack. But what I basically wanted to say was there were lots of games that were competitive games, two-player competitive games where you were attacking the other player. And those were some of my favorite games. There was one called Warlords that it was a 4-person game that we used to play against my family. Like, each of us play against each other all the time, and you had 4 corners of the screen. You had a fort and a thing like in Breakout where you had to stop the ball from hitting your fort and try to hit somebody else's fort with the ball, and you used a paddle wheel instead of a joystick. These were all things that were completely not oriented toward a gender, but they were probably more popular with guys. But a lot of the girls in my neighborhood liked them. And the idea that this stuff is something new, that competitive games and that combat style games are something new, and that girls are left out because reasons, is ridiculous. It goes all the way back to old 8-bit games.
Oh. Agreed.
All right. I know I'm robotic still, so I don't know when it's gonna go away. I'm going to play the next part, and when you guys want me to pause, I'll pause.
Box 1 are refusing to serve a huge untapped market. Untapped market? We're talking millions of women who would love to play more games, but are being pushed away from the hobby by weird old-fashioned...
Stop.
By mere what?
Oh God, hold on. I'm finding something problematic, triggering, and just plain stupid. They're forced. Wait, they're forced? Really? There's people out there forcing women to not play these games. Prove it. Fucking prove it.
They
That's all
ask
I gotta
them
say.
really
Fucking
mean
prove it.
questions like,
Oh my God.
did you buy it for your boyfriend? Because they're like really awkward and that's the only way they know how to flirt and find out if a girl has a boyfriend.
Right.
But that's like creepy and gross. So I'm assaulted by that.
Right.
I would have missed out on a great 2-year relationship if I had had that chip on my shoulder. The pickup line was, do you know if they have the Charlemagne's Paladin book?
Well, that was very specific.
That's hot.
That's only going to work on a handful of people.
Yeah, but it did.
That's awesome. All right, I'm done ranting about forcing things. Yeah.
Marketing that publishers are sticking with seemingly out of sheer force of habit. Force of habit.
Ah, who's doing that? Why warning you, Megan? Because I'm mad at you. I like games. I've always liked them. Sometimes I feel like they don't love me back.
Sometimes they don't love me back.
Is that because you suck at them and your brother's better than you? What?
Yeah, get good,
How
Scrub.
was that?
Jesus.
Tis or DTFO? Oh, wait, no. Sorry.
That's a child, Anna.
It's such a misogynist, Dan, I swear. God.
Incestuous misogynist. I'm sorry.
Clearly,
That's all right.
yeah, clearly they just need a misogyn therapist.
Is my robot voice too bad to make a quick point?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So it's funny that this woman is complaining about games not loving her back when Movie Bob Chipman, earlier this week, he made a video about how we shouldn't give a shit about Dead or Alive because your products don't love you back.
Oh, man, Bob Chipman, that guy. Hey, Bob Chipman, you're an asshole. Shut the fuck up, please. Thank you. Oh.
Okay, let's keep
What the
going.
hell is this chick supposed to want from games exactly?
I don't
And
know,
how's that
man.
her brother's fault? And why is she hurting him for games not liking her back? What the fuck is this?
Right.
Feminism.
What even is this?
Not even once.
Okay, let's keep going. I'm going to go back a little bit so you can hear her bitch again.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like they don't love me back. Act like I'm not supposed to play them or something just because you listen to all these stupid ads.
Video games are the greatest new art form of the century. They can do anything. Saying it for just one gender is ridiculous.
All right, stop that.
Did he say that?
Two
Yeah.
things. One, name me a single citation needed, a single commercial of that tells girls aren't supposed to play games. Because that's literally what she just said. She gets a bad feeling because of all these commercials. She's not supposed to play games. Who the fuck ever tells you to not? No, they're saying do. Hey, boys, do. That's different from girl, don't. Those are two fucking different things. Secondly, did he just call video games the greatest art form of the century? Oh, shut the fuck up, you postmodernist, pretentious.
No, he said the greatest new art form.
Good grief. That could be said about every great new art form that comes out.
Truly.
What was in my toilet that came out was a great art form.
Limiting video games by calling them an art form is pretentious also. But I'm calling it right now. There will be new advertising because of all of this shit. There will be new ads that will come out, and they will treat girl gamers like they are something special and new, and they'll portray them as the stars of the game.
Oh, those fake girls will be so disillusioned when they get into the real gaming world, and they'll be like, "Oh shit, nobody cares," because there's girls here all the time.
They go in expecting to be special, and they find out there are already other girls there.
You know, if I can make a quick little anecdote, if it is that thing. Back when I used to play Rainbow Six Vegas competitively, my clan and I went up against this group of girls called oh Jesus fucking Christ! It was Ubisoft fucking Christ. Their girl gamer team, and I can't remember what their name is.
The Sirens?
No, not the Sirens. Jesus, it just slipped my mind because I'm old and dumb. But anyway, we played against them. Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm so stupid. I'm sorry. Anyway, we got into a match with these girls. We were playing a competitive match with them, and they were talking all this shit. It was this all-girl gamer team from Ubisoft, and we kicked the living fuck out of them. The Frag Dolls, thank you. Fuck, I can't believe I forgot that. Anyway, so they came back, and after the match, they were talking shit again, and it was just like you want to talk about, like, it's like none of these girls were like, oh God, I can't play these games. They were talking shit. They were totally, they were fucking, for lack of a better way of saying it, they were swinging their dicks around like they're fucking Chief some shit, And so this whole idea that girls have to be coddled and all this kind of nonsense, it's kind of fucking ridiculous.
Not real girl gamer. There's a difference between a girl gamer and a gamer girl. Like
a gamer who happens to be a girl.
Yeah, because they're like in their unwashed hair and like sweatpants yelling at some 12-year-old and throwing controllers all over the place. It's not like all made up with their like anime contacts and a wig with the controller coiling in their mouth. That's not how I game. I can't. That's not my Twitch stream. I don't have a cleavage. I game. That's what I do. I'm sorry. God damn it. Yeah. I fail at the girl game.
All right.
Gamer girl.
Let's get to the end. We're almost at the end here.
Oh, wait, no. One quick point about the whole art form. Yeah, it's a secondary thing. Anything can be an art form once you look at it that way. Pornography is an art form. Like, comics are an art form. Street art is now an art form. Like, speaking poetry to a weird, rappy beat is art. Like, there's so many things that are art also. But games, at their base, are entertainment that you operate with your hands and brain that interact. It's that. And you can't just go away and ignore that and focus on the fact that it's art and be like, that's like that thing they did, the feminists with the history class. And the question was, well, do you want factually important, like, do you want factual information, or do you want like relevant and like poignant information? So basically what they were saying is like to omit certain historical facts and dates because they were like just like not. They just didn't care about the facts. In a history class, it's like, no, you can't do that. You can't decouple some things because you also want to add something good or fancy on top of that. No. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's an accident that Adam is using the word art form, because that's one of the things that a lot of these people have been pushing for. I'm sorry, and I'm of the belief that he's a part of that, or at least he believes that should be the way it is.
Oh yeah, he's using lots of weasel words here to try and make things seem more important or more prescient. Just more important than they actually are. He's trying to, lend a lot of weight to stuff that's kind of silly and frilly and whatever. It's not terribly important. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about it is that art's not the primary function of games. It's not the primary reason they're created. It's not the primary reason people want them. And social justice warriors trying to make it a primary factor, they're basically doing that because they have turned art into social justice in their own way. They've created an environment within the art world wherein social justice is rule and law. Political correctness is more important than anything, and of course the level of pretentiousness that exists in the art world has gotten to the point where it's comical. When you can look at a blank canvas and talk about how profound a statement the artist was making by hanging that in with the rest of his art, and be taken seriously, be taken as seriously as a discussion of great artists from history, it becomes very questionable whether or not there's any intellectualism left in the art community at all. It's all like something out of the movie Being There, where everybody pretends to know and understand when nobody actually does. And they're trying to do the same things to video games because it will give them that foot in the door to order people around.
Yeah. And if you guys want to see more of that, we actually have a show where we did a little debate on it. It's Our Games Art. It's on our HoneyBadger YouTube channel. So you go look it up. All right, I'm going to hit play so we can get through this shit, because I can't stand looking at this guy's fucking hair.
Yeah, it's like saying movies are just for girls or books are just for dads. Stupid.
When we think about video games in such a limited way, it makes the games worse, it loses the industry money, and it's really mean to your sister.
It's really mean to your sister.
What the hell? So a game that
Just wait about 3 minutes.
Yeah, I've seen this.
Wait, so hold on. The
Is
kid's
this
having
kid
a temper
screaming?
tantrum?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
what the
kid
fuck was
throws
that
a-
about?
It throws a tantrum, and this is important. Adam says, "I've seen this before."
oh, for crying
What
out
do you
loud.
think? What do you
fuck,
think that's a
man.
reference to?
Oh, gee, I don't know. I wonder.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to address that statement that thinking games are just for boys makes the game worse. Like, how do you affect something that's already been created? It exists. It has the same mechanics. It has the same artwork. It has the same storyline.
Unless
it has the same
you're the
characters. It
prejudiced
has,
one.
you know,
Like, ew,
it's
this is for boys. It has cooties.
code in it's code. It's already saved to a memory device that you can't change with your stupid brain waves by having feelings about it. I just how can he like actually make a statement that stupid
Hannah,
and expect to be taken seriously?
this man obviously has an agenda. I think
Apparently
you know the answer. I think you already know the answer to this question.
Agenda is spelled with an alphabet that lacks IQ.
Oh,
God.
that's sassy. I like it. Oh my.
It just blows my mind.
Yeah, obviously these people are disingenuous. They're bad actors, and they're putting this stuff out there because they're pushing something. And even when it's under the guise of humor, it's like he's still got a bias, and it's still fucking just so out there and blatant that anybody with a half a brain can see it. I mean, that was just really kind of pathetic. It's like all throughout that video, I'm just like, ding, 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 my alarms are going off. It's like, okay, people were forced to do this, or women were forced to do this. I'm just like, oh, please, nobody was forced to do anything. And it's like, and when you get into this kind of all or nothing absolutist language, like the guy Adam was using, it's just if alarms aren't going off in your brain as a functioning a person with the ability to wake up in the morning and see that the sun rises and then sets. If you can't, there's problems. There are huge, huge problems if that's not setting off alarm bells. The stuff that guy was saying.
I'm back. Do I sound okay?
You sound
great.
just fine.
Great. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Yeah, so Adam ruins everything. I know that this isn't a show about that. I know we've already gone like an hour and stuff, but I admit that when I first saw his I was down for that, Oh shit, I'm blue.
When you first did what?
The first of his videos I ever saw was the one about circumcision. Has that where the whole movie's like one continuous shot. But the whole one continuous shot thing has been done in other movies. I remember the first movie I saw it in was the one with Clive Owen. I think it's
Children of Men?
Children of Men, yes, where basically they're running out of people. And there's a great scene that's one continuous shot, and that stands out. Some like The Matrix stands out because it did something that hadn't been done before, where it actually had been done before, but it hadn't been done as well in American cinema. It was borrowing from cinema from other countries, specifically Hong Kong cinema mostly, but a little bit of stuff from Japan as well. And then they threw in like a really great science fiction narrative that was really new, and they made something unique. And I think that's why it stands apart, and maybe even more so than other films that may have come before it that have a similar aesthetic, say Equilibrium or Dark City, which I think those are great movies too. But they just didn't have the same reach. When we look at really old films that are sort of new, or really different, we always look at stuff like the stuff that Alfred Hitchcock made. But what Hitchcock was doing, no one else was doing. So obviously he stands out. Or even like Kubrick, 2001, or The Shining, or A Clockwork Orange.
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now, right?
A very different take on the classic war film.
Yes, and these were all really, they're considered classics, and I think actually in many ways, and you were just talking about this, Scott, when you were saying like, you know, The Godfather and like Scarface they seem overrated, and when you watch them, I even made a joke about the Planet of the Apes, because the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston. A really good movie to me. However, if I sit down and watch it now, I can tell that it would not be something that would be appealing to a modern audience because it moves at a very slow pace, especially in the beginning where they're walking across the planet for long stretches of time and nothing is happening. And I'm thinking, well, a young person would be like, I want something to stimulate me right now. And this is why, like, the newer Planet of the Apes movies, which are also good, you know, they're very different in their feel. Like, they're very, fast-paced and energetic, whereas the old one, you were watching it for... I mean, ultimately, what makes the Planet of the Apes good, the original, is the ending. Yeah. It's like Soylent Green. It's like Blade Runner. Like, you watch it for the ending, and everything else is just like this slow burn, and then when everything comes to fruition, you're like, holy shit, it's like a mind-blower. But I think that... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just have my controversial moment of the show?
Yeah, do it.
Just a perfect example of what you're talking about, how there are movies that came out at a specific time and how they were revolutionary and is just for breaking new ground for like new genres that they're trying to create. Everybody remember the original Halloween, Michael Myers, Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah.
That movie sucks. That movie sucks. I'm sorry, I know I'm going to get everybody really mad at me right now, but I'm sorry.
No.
That movie is hokey, terrible dialogue, and not scary at all. But came out at the time, slasher flick, and it, like, Freddy and Jason came out after that. So obviously it was like a great portion.
It's a milestone. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that was just my example.
Here's another thing too that I wanted to point out. Before Jaws, there was really no such thing as a summer blockbuster. Jaws was the first summer blockbuster film, and Jaws, again, really good. I mean, like, quotable as fuck. I love movies you can quote. For that, you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing. But I mean, Jaws is a good movie, but when you look at it, it's definitely dated, like Poltergeist or other ones of Spielberg was doing at the time, or other people. But before we had Jaws, all other films were not necessarily made to rake in all kinds of summer cash. And after Jaws, the success of that film, I think it changed the industry, and I think that's another reason why Jaws stands out, because, again, it did something new that hadn't been done. And then it was all about, like, how can we make the next summer blockbuster? And that thing has just kind of snowballed to a point now where today we come to expect several movies that are trying to do the summer blockbuster thing, and that's how you get these Transformers films, where they're not good, and they just have a whole bunch of effects and shit. I'm reminded again of before CG was really commonplace, the first film that really made CG a big deal, and there were films that did CG before this, was Terminator 2. But that was the one that did it so well and for its time, and it really stood out. And so that's another reason why I think a film like Terminator 2 stands out, because if you look at it, I mean, it's a good movie, but I think it's important because for me, the T-1000, was doing shit that I didn't know how they did it. So it was fascinating, and I think a lot of people were blown away by that. So it really comes down to, like, novelty. No, it's okay, Scott. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's why this discussion about film has to stay fluid, because when you look at the history of things, like, Citizen Kane, Apocalypse Now, Terminator 2, fucking Avatar, everything is changing in ways that we don't know how it's going to change, obviously, at this point. 10 years from now, somebody is going to do something that will mirror the kind of success that The Matrix had when it came out, and it was like, holy shit, that's mind-blowing. So it's constantly changing and updating with the possibilities of what can be done as far as just visually and story-wise. So this idea that we have to judge everything on Citizen Kane or on, whatever it is, whatever the touchstone that people hold so dear, is just
North by Northwest.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's like, Hitchcock. He you can say he was, some of the, like, Psycho was a touchstone. It was something. It was remarkable for its day. But now you go back and watch it, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. It is what it is. You can appreciate it, but you have to allow for some fluidity when you're talking about moving into the future, because who knows when the next Matrix is going to come along and just be like, bam, whoa, what the fuck was that? So it's just, this conversation. It's a finite conversation to have, because it's going to change every 5 to 10 years without question. Question.
It's also important to note that a lot of times when people look back on film history, we cherry pick the stuff that was the best, and we don't really consider how much schlock was also being made.
Yeah.
That people just either just vanished into the ether, or it's on Netflix right now. Like fucking gore and like, You're the Hunter or something. There's some really bad movies that came out in the 80s. Yeah, the Barbarian Brothers, I don't know. Like just right. the all the shit Doll Man, Puppet Master.
Yeah. Puppet Master, forgot about that.
Don't forget the Barbarian tit movies. I mean, come on.
I love the Barbarian movies. Oh, yes. Basket Case, right. I mean, there was just like, but there's always been crap, but it's just a matter of like, how we look at the stuff that's good and compare it. And I think that mostly why a lot of the stuff that's older looks better is because it was more, there would appear to be more films that were breaking new ground. And today, there are more films that are like safer bets, so they're more like, they're adaptations, they're remakes, they're sequels most of the time, because I think it's mainly because there's an enormous financial investment in making a big film, and everyone's trying to make a blockbuster, so they got to spend the most amount of money, but they want to make sure they're going to get the largest return on their investment. That's why when we look at the films that were really great, they're not that big. They're like the smaller ones, not necessarily like highbrow indie shit. But like, Ex Machina was daring and new, and it was trying something, and it clearly had a budget, but it wasn't doing something that had been done. It was trying to like take something that had been spoken about and do it in a new way and make it interesting. Whiplash was the same. Whiplash is just acting. Yeah. That's just fucking acting, the whole fucking thing. That's great. It's so relieving. I love my Marvel films, but sometimes I just wanted to see a good performance.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and at the end of the day, just to go back to something we were talking about earlier, was that when I'm watching the Marvel movies, the action's great, that's fine and all, but honestly, I care more about the characters. Like, especially like Captain America. Like, fucking love the first Captain America. I love the idea of I love the idea of these people, finding redemption or finding who they are and really kind of living up to that. That's way more interesting to me than Captain America beating up a bunch of fucking aliens or whatever. I mean, that's cool and all. It's spectacle. It's neat. But I want to know what's happening to these people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Winter Soldier was like a political thriller, and it brought up a lot of questions about morality that movies of its kind are seldom ever do, because they're so focused on the spectacle.
Right.
That's why it holds up really well. I think the Winter Soldier will be a lot of. That's one of those. It's going to have like a good shelf life because it's more than just spectacle. But we're wasting good material for tomorrow's show.
Oh god.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so we'll save that.
Oh,
okay, so let's. I guess we'll just wrap it up. I wanted to do some mailbag, but all this other stuff went on too long. But I will make it up to you guys tomorrow and do some mailbag stuff. So. Thanks for joining us. If you like the stuff that we're doing, please consider donating at our Patreon. That's patreon.com/HoneyBadgerRadio. And please write in if you know that we got something wrong. You just want to correct us and check us on our shit at topic@badgerpod.com. I love being corrected by geeks that have more geek cred than me. Yeah, I mean, also feel free to check out the guys that are on my panel here. They have their own YouTube channels. Max Darrett has a great YouTube channel, and you should go look at it. Scott, do you have something? Do you have like a podcast or something?
Not at the moment. I have a loose collection of things on my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
Take what you will from it.
What's your YouTube channel?
Oh God, what? I don't know. Just look up Geek Variety.
It's really old.
Yeah.
He's got like stuff where he predicted that PewDiePie was gonna make it big.
Shit, I wish I was that guy because I would have done it then. I would have done it. Hey, bros, what's going on? Hey,
Yeah.
go play some games.
He was streaming fucking.
I would have been making the shekels then.
Twisted Metal 2 streaming.
God,
All right, and Hannah's, you still do the breaking the glasses thing. Is there anything else that you want to throw in there?
Well, yeah, I got that. That's my YouTube channel and my blog, breakingtheglasses.blogspot.com.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the Honey Badger Brigade blog, which we're slow at publishing right now, but we're getting there.
Yes. We are trying to grow the Honey Badger Brigade, make it a big thing. We like having these talks. We think they're important discussions about our culture and about gender and relations between the sexes and everything else. And while we have this platform and while YouTube is still the Wild West, we will use it. So, yeah, we'll see you guys soon. And thanks for joining us.